Well, good afternoon, everyone. I'm absolutely delighted to be able to talk to you, and I'm really sorry I can't be with you in person. But I know over the last couple of days you will have had a fantastic summit looking at the ideas of social value. I want to start out absolutely at the outset by thanking Landmark for being pioneers on this agenda, but also Social Enterprise UK, who have been absolutely instrumental in bringing together the politics, the business world, community organisations, and I think for many years have done a fabulous job, but have really come into their own around the social value agenda. And obviously I'll be looking forward to seeing the results of the conference, the reports, the write-backs, because I feel that this whole agenda of social value is incredibly exciting. I've said in some of my publications that I believe that there's sometimes a moment in politics, in business, in communities, when things come together and an idea really starts to get traction and momentum. And when I look back nearly 2 years ago now, when Chris White, who I know has been very involved in the conference, he drew number 1 in the private members' ballot for a bill, and he was a brand new member of Parliament. So the angels must have been shining on Chris, I think. And Chris's idea for his legislation was to say, why can't we do something small but absolutely transformational in the Public Services Social Value Act? And I've believed in the values of social enterprise throughout my political career, when I was a local councillor, 15 years as a Member of Parliament, and in every single ministerial role that I've held in health, in the police, in the communities department. I've always wanted to draw in the tremendous value that social enterprise can bring. And in fact, I formulated the very first national social enterprise strategy, which went right across government and said to every single government department, what are you doing in your area to draw on the benefit and energy, expertise, innovation of different kind of organisations. So when Chris decided to move this bill, I thought I'm really going to help him here, because private members' bills can be a little bit like premature babies. They can be fragile. All it takes is one member to stand up in the House of Commons and shout object, and the bill falls. So Chris and I really did work together to make sure that we got the bill through, and all credit to him for taking up this idea and running with it. We then managed to get backing from the government. Nick Hurd, the minister, decided that this was a really good idea, and now it's on the statute book. But I know from all of my experience that you don't simply change things by passing a piece of legislation. That's really the very first step. After that, you need to get people who want to take up the ideas, early adopters, people who will be pioneers of the movement, who will explore different ways of working, who will find things that work, things also that don't work. That learning is absolutely essential. And the way in which you get big cultural change, which I believe social value is absolutely about, is to get those people who are passionate, who want to do things in a different way, who are prepared to innovate and prepared to learn from the action that they take, but then also prepared to spread that good practice, to go out almost as passionate advocates, as missionaries, if you like, on this agenda. And I know that Landmark has been absolutely at the forefront of all of that. So I want to say well done to Landmark for being prepared to be a pioneer. The work that Landmark's done is absolutely amazing. I think there's £90 million reinvested in the country's economy from looking at the supply chain in a different way. 50% of the procurement is done with small and medium-sized businesses, giving them a chance to grow in the community. And lots of people who are ex-servicemen and women are actually employed and able to have a new career. What a fabulous achievement. And this whole agenda, for me, is actually about getting as much social impact about how you do your business, as well as the actual things that you're buying through your procurement, the services that you're providing. And therefore, it's kind of a win-win. And one of the reasons that I'm very attracted to it, and I'm a passionate advocate for this agenda, is because public money is going to be really tight. Whichever government is in power over the next 10 years or so, there isn't going to be a great big load of public money to be able to invest in doing the good things that we all want to do in our health service, in education, in making the country a better place to live, in giving our young people jobs and opportunities for the future. So if we can devise a scheme whereby when we're spending public money, but not just public money, private money as well, that we do it in a way that creates opportunities for jobs, that stimulates a supply chain, that really welcomes innovation, agility, the ability to think differently, draws in all of that energy and intellectual power that there is in our country, then I think that we are really we're getting a double hit about what we do. And this is about working smarter, it's about being more creative, and it is about being prepared to take some risks as well. And that's a big lesson for government, because I know, having been a minister, that sometimes the appetite for risk is tiny, because if something goes wrong, the world opens in on you, you end up in front of a select committee. It's not a good place to be. But I do think on this agenda, if we're going to make that big push forward, then government also has got to be prepared to help people to take some risks, to do things that don't necessarily have 100% proven evidence base, because if that's all we ever do, we won't move forward. So my message to government is to be absolutely equal partners in this journey, together with organisations like Landmark, but many, many other private companies, local authorities, social enterprises, voluntary groups. Dare I say it, we really are all in this together. And I think if we can get that kind of partnership, then we are going to make huge progress. In the 18 months or so since we took the bill through Parliament, there actually has been, I think, quite significant change. And I've been really heartened at the fact that although the bill puts a duty on public authorities to take into account social, economic and environmental impact in its commissioning decisions, it doesn't cover, if you like, the private sector. It doesn't apply to them. I have been amazed by the number of big and small private sector companies who get this idea and really want to take it up. We talk a lot about moving towards a more responsible capitalism, a way in which business can really feel part of the community. And the principles behind the Public Service Social Value Act actually have motivated and energised the private sector to want to be part of this great partnership. I've been working with some companies like Fujitsu, Veolia, Sodexo, Interserve, big household names who really want to do their business in a different way so that they get the maximum social impact. They want to take on apprentices. They want to give young people a chance to get on in the future. They want to use their procurement policies to make a real impact in the communities in which they operate. And some of them now are looking at taking on people who have been ex-offenders. That's risk-taking. But if you're prepared to do it, very often people who've been in trouble in the past can turn their lives around and make a positive contribution to their families and to their communities. But what's absolutely fascinating is that now those businesses are saying to me, they're not just doing it because it's philanthropy, it's charity, it's corporate social responsibility. There's an emerging business case that this actually makes economic sense. And the chief executive of Fujitsu, for example, said to me, since they've taken on apprentices, which they never used to, they always took on graduates, they're taking on apprentices, teaching them about their business, giving them bespoke skills. Their retention rate of really high quality staff has gone up significantly. That saves the business money. So you've got something that people want to do with their hearts, they're passionate, and also something that has a business case. My experience is, if you can get head and heart working together again, provided the political climate is right, that's the moment at which these ideas really do begin to take off. Right across the country, local authorities of all parties beginning to see this makes sense. I've got very little money to spend, but if I can spend it in my community and give people a sense of ownership, a sense of true partnership, that their views are designing the programmes, that we're using small social enterprises who very often bring innovation, new ways of doing things, then they can still manage, even at a time of austerity, to provide some decent services to their communities, and that's what drives local authorities. So whether it's Birmingham, Liverpool, my own authority in Salford, who are now putting social value clauses in all of its procurement, it is again beginning to take off. I was talking to some of the big National Health Service organisations recently. Bart's Hospital in London have just launched the biggest ever procurement in the National Health Service, and through every bit of their contract, their subcontracts, the way in which they've negotiated the competition, everything is about social value. So for me, this is really heartening, because at first I think people thought, if we put social value clauses in our contracts, then the price will go up. Because if you say you've got to have so many apprentices, you've got to look at the environment, you've got to recycle your waste, all of that, then it'll just become more and more expensive. And actually, the opposite is happening. I've been working with some housing associations up in the northwest, 10 housing associations. They've got quite a bit of money to spend on construction, on refurbishment, and they decided that they would go with social value. And in fact, the contracts that came in, I'm told that the bidders who had the most social value, the most commitment, the best ideas, the best innovation, actually came in slightly cheaper than the conventional, traditional construction contract. So the more evidence we can get of that kind of thing, the more chance we have of convincing government, of convincing more people in the private sector, the public sector, actually to go down this path. And the social enterprise and voluntary sector, I've believed in the people who work in those organisations for many, many years, because they're not motivated solely by profit. They're not about making, a huge amount of money for themselves. But whenever you talk to people who've got an idea and a passion, then they almost radiate that sense of commitment and energy. If you could bottle that, then it would be an amazing thing for the country. But the problem has always been, for those organisations, insecurity of funding, the fact that very often it's difficult to grow to scale. You have a great idea, but you can only do it in a tiny way because you can't get the funding coming through. Sometimes you don't have the security of a long-term plan, and if you want to develop an idea, you might need 3, 4, 5 years to get to where you want to be. Big business can cope with that. Very often small organisations can't. And again, that's why this social value agenda is so important, because it gives people the chance to grow to scale, to be part of the landscape for the long term, to be partners with some of the bigger enterprises. Fujitsu were telling me recently that they've done several events for Meet the Buyers, looking at their supply chain. And instead of seeing small businesses as competitors, they now see small businesses as collaborators. And I know that Landmark have been doing this for a long time, but for some companies it's quite new. And what they're finding is that those small organisations bring to them agility and innovation that they as a big company just can't do. So again, a really good business case for making that happen. One of the really important things that people have raised with me, businesses, local authorities and social organisations, is that now we really need to be able to measure the social impact that we're making. Because if you can't measure it and there's no transparency around it, it's very hard for people to get recognition for what they've done. So we've organised a parliamentary roundtable at the end of February. The Minister, Nick Hurd's coming. I'm hoping the Health Minister's going to come. Chuka Amuna's going to come. And we've been working on a framework for how we might measure social impact. Because there are 20 different ways at the moment of measuring what you're doing. And I think, again, if we're going to make this mainstream, having some real principles around how you measure environmental impact, economic well-being, the quality of apprenticeships and opportunities for training, that's the next big step for me. And everybody in business will tell you what gets measured gets done. So that's our next priority. One of the things that's really pleased me in the last couple of months is the change in attitude in Europe. In the past, the European Union was always seen as a block on being able to procure in a socially aware way. If you put social clauses into your contracts, there was a fear that the European Union would come down on you like a ton of bricks. It would be anti-competitive. There'd be issues around state aid. It was all too difficult. And in fact, over the last year or so, the European Union has been undergoing a transformation on this agenda. Just last weekend, there was a conference in Strasbourg with 2,000 delegates from all over the European Union celebrating the achievements of social enterprise. The Commissioner has decided that a number of practical things. He's going to raise the limit for contracts that need to go out to European competition from 100,000 to €500,000 euros. He's going to, I think in some cases, even reserve some of the contracts for mutuals, for social organisations to be able to do. This is revolutionary in terms of European Union views, but they've recognised that the social enterprise and social business sector actually again can really help to kickstart the European economy, provided it's given a platform to be able to do that. So I want every procurement officer right across the country to almost feel liberated that the European Union is no longer there, waiting for you to transgress the rules and be prosecuted or whatever. There now is a much more positive climate in Europe to make this happen. There's now a new integrated reporting requirement for companies in the European Union, which again will require them to report on what kind of impact are they making through the business that they do. So again, these are all things that are kind of pieces of the jigsaw that are making this agenda mainstream. I would like to think that we come back in 5 years' time, or maybe even sooner, and we're no longer perhaps the missionaries, the passionate advocates, perhaps we're all mainstream, but then we'll be boring. And I don't want us to ever to be boring, because this is the kind of political agenda that fires you up, that really gets your blood racing and your heart pounding, because you feel like you're on the brink of change. And I think that the summit that you've been at for the last couple of days is absolute evidence that can happen. I want to work over the next few months to see if I can get all political parties as part of their manifesto to make a commitment to social enterprise, to social value. I'd like to see the Social Value Act extended to infrastructure and goods. The big spend in the next few years is going to be on big capital projects. Why haven't we got social value in high speed 2? Why haven't we got social value in some of our big defence procurement contracts? And that way I think we can make a difference. And I would also like a commitment from all parties to grow the social investment market. That's an emerging market where we're able to mobilise capital from people who want to do good, to be able to support our public services in the long run, so that we can carry on improving health and education and looking after the people who really need that kind of care. So sometimes hard times generate innovation, and they generate creativity and new thinking. Nobody would ever have wished these years of austerity on the country. But sometimes when you're in a tight corner and there isn't a big pot of money, then you have to really, use your brain, use your ideas, use your experience, the skills, the wisdom that you've acquired over many years, and say, how can we do things differently? And that's the moment that I think has now arrived. The combination of a difficult economic climate, of the Public Services Social Value Act, of the emergence of a social investment market, of the willingness to grow social enterprises to scale, to make sure that they're investment ready and that they can really take on this challenge. I've not known a moment like this in my 30 years in politics. And if I've learnt one thing, it's when there's a moment, you seize it. So it's been absolutely fabulous to be able to share some ideas and some enthusiasm with you today. And I know that you've had a fantastic summit. And really, I just want to say to all of you, please go out there, be those passionate advocates, be those missionaries for change, because we've never had an opportunity like this. And if you don't grasp the opportunity, then we will fail to achieve the huge benefits that I think we can make for ordinary people in this country. So I want to thank Landmark, I want to thank Social Enterprise UK, who've done such a brilliant job. Thank you for listening to me this afternoon, and I hope to be working with all of you in the future.